Redefining Poverty, a quantitative look at capabilities by Ashley Faulkner and Cole Rosenberger.
When you ask someone on the street what they think poverty is, you get responses like people on welfare,
Those who don't have any money.
homeless people.
There is far more to poverty than these stereotypes. By certain definitions, far more people are living in poverty than you would expect.
Many poverty measurements, including that of the United States, only worry about income lowness. This is due, in part, to a fallacy of measurement in which people only tend to identify the issue by the easiest way to measure it. In this situation, people tend to only associate poverty with money because historically it has been this way, and it is hard to think of it in other terms. However, there is more needed to live a dignified life than just money, and if being impoverished means lacking dignity, then in addition to income, capabilities must be addressed.
For this reason, we decided to define poverty as lacking sufficient economic resources, as well as the capabilities necessary to live a moderately dignified life.
We chose to define poverty by this definition because we feel that many of Nussbaum's 10 central capabilities, alongside the monetary issues, are essential in measuring inadequacies in human dignity.
Having money is useless if you don't have the capabilities to use it. For example, if you make a sizable income compared to those in your community but aren't allowed to spend it because of your religion or gender, you aren't meeting your basic needs. The vice versa is also true. Being able to participate in the economy by law is met by your capabilities, but without the monetary funds, you are unable to.
We feel that a portion of the issues facing those impoverished can be solved through monetary means, the best measurement for this being the Supplemental Poverty Measure, referred to from here on out as the SPM.
However, this is only half of the story in the issue of poverty. Human capabilities must be addressed in order for one to have a dignified life. These issues, as explained later, are best approached through public policy, community programs, and legislation.
The SPM looks at the sum of cash income plus in-kind benefits that families can use to meet their SCSU needs, which stands for food, clothing, shelter, and utilities, minus taxes, work expenses, and out-of-pocket medical expenses.
This threshold is set at the 33rd percentile of the FCSU costs for families with exactly 2 children and then multiplied by 1.2. To put this in simple terms, those whose material earnings fall in the lowest 1/3 of the national standard are considered to be in poverty.
We feel that it is a more accurate depiction of economic poverty as compared to the official poverty measure, referred from here on out as the OPM, which only takes into account antiquated food cost as a threshold for poverty.
When the OPM was created, food was thought to be the largest portion of a family's income. Therefore, Molly Orshansky, the creator of the OPM, found it reasonable to simply multiply average food costs by 3. Since the 60s, food prices have dramatically dropped, making food account for approximately 1/6 of a family's budget. As a result, the OPM sets the threshold at possibly half the financial need of those impoverished.
The SPM takes into account information that is lacking from the OPM.
For example, the SPM takes into account in-kind benefits, such as housing and SNAP, and near-cash benefits, including tax credits.
It also takes into account cohabitation, which is far more prevalent in today's society than in 1963, when the OPM was originally formulated. The SPM takes into account information that is lacking from the OPM.
For example, the SPM
As we said
takes into
earlier,
account
there is
in-kind
more to
benefits
poverty
such
than
as
money.
housing and SNAP,
For one
and
to
near
have a
cash
dignified
benefits,
life,
including
we
tax
believe
credits.
they must possess a certain
It also
set of
takes into
capabilities.
account cohabitation,
Capabilities
which
are
is
the
much more
things
prevalent
people
in
are able
today's
to be
society than in
and do.
1963,
Given their
when
circumstances,
the OPM was
it
formulated.
is their choice to actually
The benefits
complete
of
these
the
actions,
SPM can be
also
seen
known
in
as
the following
functioning,
situation.
but their capabilities
Imagine
offer
Sam
the
has a chronic
opportunity.
illness that
We
requires
choose the
medication
following
and
set of
experimental
capabilities
procedures
because we
not
felt they
covered
were
by
integral in
insurance.
living a
With the
dignified
OPM,
life.
the medical out-of-pocket expenses aren't taken
The
into
first central
consideration. So
capability
even
is
though
life.
this expense makes it
This
impossible
includes
for
the
Sam to meet
assurance
his
that
needs,
one can
he
live
is
to
not
a reasonable
impoverished.
age.
However,
We
the
chose to
SPM
include
takes
what
into
Nussbaum
account that Sam has
considers
to spend a
bodily
large
health
portion
under
of
the
his
same
income
category,
on his health
because
and is
we
able to
believe
account
that
for
if
that
one
in
is
the
to live a
benefits he
long life,
receives.
they have
The
access
SPM
to
takes into
resources
account
such as
information
healthcare.
that is lacking
The
from the
next
OPM.
capability is
For
bodily
example, the
integrity,
SPM
which
takes into
includes
account
protection of
in-kind
one's
benefits
body
such
from
as
assault
housing and
and the
SNAP,
freedom
and
to
near
make
cash
your own
benefits
decisions
including tax
regarding
credits.
sex and reproduction. production. It also takes into
The
account
next
cohabitation,
capability
which is much
senses,
more prevalent in
imagination,
today's
and thought,
society than
which
in
includes one's
1963,
right to
when the
education.
OPM was formulated.
Without the ability to
The
learn,
benefits of
those
the
in
SPM
poverty
can be
cannot
seen in
work
the
their way
following
towards a
situation.
better life.
Imagine
There
Sam
would be
has
no
a chronic
progress in a
illness that
nation
requires
that doesn't
medication and
educate those who want
experimental
to learn.
procedures not
This
covered
also
by
covers
insurance.
religious freedom,
With the
which is
OPM,
protected
the
by the
medical
American Bill of
out-of-pocket
Rights.
expenses aren't taken into
Practical reason
consideration.
ensures
So
that we
even
are
though this
able to
expense
make
makes
our
it
own
impossible for
conceptions
Sam
of
to
good
meet
and
his
bad
needs,
and have
he is not
control in our
impoverished.
life's pathway.
However, the
This
SPM takes
capability
into
is
account that
important
Sam has
because
to
without
spend
the
a large
ability to
portion
make
of his
your own
income
decisions,
on his health
there is
and is
no way
able
to
to
make
account for that in the benefits he receives. The SPM
Affiliation
takes
is
into
necessary
account
because it is
information that
one's
is lacking
ability
from
to
the OPM.
interact in a society
For
without
example, the
discrimination.
SPM takes
How
into
can
account
someone have
in-kind
dignity if
benefits
they feel
such as
ashamed
housing
and
and
can't
SNAP,
participate
and
in
near
society?
cash benefits including
can't.
tax credits.
In the United States,
It also takes
our
into
laws
account
don't necessarily
cohabitation,
protect
which is much
emotions,
more
but they
prevalent in
protect
today's
actions
society
that are
than in
usually associated
1963,
with the
when the
ability to have
OPM was
emotions,
formulated.
such as
The
love
benefits
and
of the
grief. They
SPM can be
also
seen in
protect
the
us from
following
living in
situation.
fear.
The
Imagine
last
Sam has a
central
chronic
capability,
illness that
in our
requires
opinion, is
medication
control
and
over one's
experimental
environment.
procedures not
This is
covered
meant
by
from a
insurance.
political and
With the
material
OPM,
standpoint.
the medical
This again is
out-of-pocket
covered
expenses
mostly by
aren't
the
taken into
constitutional rights
consideration. So
assured
even
to
though
all
this expense
Americans.
makes it
From
impossible
a
for Sam
political
to meet his
standpoint,
needs,
everyone is
he is
allowed
not
to express
impoverished.
their beliefs
However,
and vote
the
if they are
SPM
above
takes
the age
into
of
account
18
that Sam
and
has to
registered.
spend a large
In
portion of his
addition,
income
materialistically,
on his health and
one
is
has
able
the
to
right
account
to
for
own
that in the
property and
benefits
hold
he
any
receives.
job they are
The
qualified
SPM
for,
takes into
regardless
account
of race or
information that
gender.
is lacking from the OPM.
For example, the SPM takes into account in-kind benefits such as housing and SNAP, and near cash benefits including tax credits.
It also takes into account cohabitation, which is much more prevalent in today's
These
society
capabilities
than
are
in
completely needed to
1963,
not just
when
live
the
a dignified
OPM was
life,
formulated.
but are required for
The
basic
benefits of
human
the
rights.
SPM can be
With the
seen in the
economic
following
resources
situation.
to support these
Imagine
capabilities,
Sam
a
has a
person
chronic
should not
illness that
just
requires
survive but
medication
thrive in
and
today's
experimental
society.
procedures not
As
covered
for
by
Nussbaum's
insurance.
central
With the
capabilities of
OPM,
play
the
and other
medical
species,
out-of-pocket
we do
expenses
not
aren't
believe
taken
that they
into
are absolutely
consideration. So
necessary
even
to
though this
live in a
expense makes it
dignified life.
impossible for Sam to meet
The
his
importance
needs,
of them
he is not
varies from
impoverished. However, the SPM takes into
These
account that Sam
capabilities
has
are
to spend a
completely
large
needed to not
portion of
just
his
live a
income
dignified
on his
life,
health
but
and is
are
able to
required
account
for
for that
basic
in the
human
benefits
rights.
he receives.
With the
The
economic
SPM takes
resources
into
to
account
support these
information that
capabilities,
is
a
lacking from
person
the
should
OPM.
not just
Capabilities
survive
can't be
but
measured
thrive.
comparatively
SPM
on a
takes into
community
account
level.
in-kind
For
benefits
For
Nussbaum's
such as
example,
central
housing
in
and
regards
capabilities
to
SNAP,
of
life,
and
play
near
and
a
other
cash
city has
benefits
life
species,
including
we do
expectancies
tax
not
far
believe
credits.
below
that they are
that of a
It
national
absolutely
also
average.
takes
necessary
into
to
It can
account
live
be
in a
assumed
dignified
that
cohabitation,
those
which is
citizens
much
do
more
not have
prevalent
proper
in
access
today's
to that
society than in
capability. This can
1963,
be improved
when
by
the
adding
OPM
These
was
programs to promote
capabilities
formulated.
are
well-being,
completely
The
such
needed
as
to
benefits of
not
the
just live a
self-judgment
SPM
and
can be
dignified
seen in
life,
the
anti-ego
following
but are
initiatives.
required
situation.
for
So by
basic
adding
human
these
Imagine
rights.
Sam
programs,
has a
With the
Sally
chronic
has
economic
illness that
clearly
resources
requires
to
improved
support these
medication
capabilities
and
to
capabilities,
meet
a
experimental
person
economic
procedures
should
needs
not
not
covered
unmeasured
just
by
on a
survive
scale.
but
insurance.
thrive.
The
With the
In
purpose is to help
OPM,
society.
the
people
medical
not worry about
out-of-pocket
As for
finding
expenses
Nussbaum's
aren't
exact
central
taken into
measurements.
capabilities of
consideration.
play
We
and
don't
other
So
view
even
these
though
species,
this
central
expense
we do
makes
not
it
capabilities
believe that
impossible
they
for
are
Sam to meet his
absolutely
needs,
necessary
he
to
is
does
live
not
not
in a
believe that
impoverished.
her
dignified
10
life.
are
However,
vital
the
tasks
The
SPM
because
takes
importance of
into
them
account
you're
that
varies
Sam
from
has
lacking
to
in
spend a
any
large
area
portion
to
of
go
his
for.
income on
These
his
We,
health and
however,
is
capabilities
able
are
believe
to
that
account
completely
for
exact
that
needed to
in the
not just
benefits
live
he
a
measurements
receives.
and
dignified life,
The
but
accessible
are
SPM takes into
required
information.
for
account
basic human
information that is
rights.
Therefore, it
lacking
is
With
from
the
the
not
economic
essential
OPM.
for all these
resources to
capabilities
support
to
these
be possessed
capabilities,
in
a
order to
person
help
should
people
not
meet
just
their needs.
survive but such as thrive in housing and today's
There
SNAP,
seems to
and society.
be
Near
a
cash benefits
reciprocal
As for
including
relationship
Nussbaum's
tax
central
between
credits.
one's
capabilities of
income
It
and
play
one's
and
also
other
takes into
species,
capabilities.
account
If
we do not
someone has
believe
cohabitation,
that
which
they
income
is
are
bonus,
much more
their
absolutely
prevalent in
capabilities are
necessary
today's
to
most
live in
likely
a
society than
not
in
being
dignified
met.
life.
If
1963,
someone has
The
when the
income
importance of
bonus,
OPM
their
was
them varies
formulated.
from
capabilities are most
individual
likely
The
not being
benefits
met.
of the
And
SPM
then,
can
if
be
someone
seen in the
doesn't have the
following
Capabilities are
necessary
situation.
completely needed
capabilities,
to
they
not
Imagine
usually
just
will
live
have
a
a
Sam
low
has a
dignified
income.
life,
chronic illness
but
that
are
The cyclical
requires
required for
relationship
basic
medication and
human
supports our
rights.
experimental
definition of
With the
procedures
poverty,
not
economic
and the
covered by
resources
necessity
to support these
consider
With the
income
capabilities.
loans
OPM,
A
and
the
person
medical
should not just
out-of-pocket
survive,
expenses
but
aren't
thrive
taken into
in society.
consideration. So even though this expense makes it impossible for Sam to meet his needs, he is not impoverished.
do not believe that
However,
they are
the
absolutely
SPM takes into
necessary to
account
live
that
in
Sam
a
has to spend a
improve
large
the
portion of his
stigma and
income
importance of
on his
them
health
varies
and is
from
able to account for
In
that in the
conclusion,
benefits
by
he receives.
educating
These capabilities
SPM
are
takes into
completely
account
needed to not just
information that
live
is
a
lacking
dignified
from the
life,
OPM.
but are
economic
required
standards.
for
We
basic
can
human
work on
needs.
eliminating
With
some
the
of the
economic
shame and lack of
resources to
dignity
support these
felt.
capabilities, a person should not just survive but thrive in today's society.
It also